I live in a little studio condo. I like my place a ton, despite the fact that it has a few subtleties that generally made me super anxious residing here. The wall confronting the road is fundamentally only a Goliath window, and I likewise live on the subsequent floor, so my window is extremely near the roads beneath. The marquee looks effectively climbable and gives direct admittance to my window. Despite the fact that that makes me somewhat self-conscious, nothing actually at any point occurred, and it recently quit irritating me several months after I moved in. That is, until a week ago. Last Monday, I awakened at around 2 a.m. to go get a water to drink. Since the kitchen is right close to the side of my front entryway, I could hear something coming from the passageway as I topped off a cup. It wasn't coming from another condo or from the roads. The commotion had that unmistakable resonation from an unfilled hallway. I moved toward the entryway and could make out that the sound was some sort of trap beat replaying again and again. Right away, I thought perhaps that was only some alcoholic person playing with his telephone prior to getting to his loft. Yet in the wake of laying in bed once more, I might in any case faintly hear a similar beat coming from the passageway. It kept endlessly playing until I nodded off about an hour after the fact. 7 a.m. rolls around and I'm awakened by somebody ringing the doorbell. It was a cop, a lot of them in fact. The property manager and a portion of my neighbors were likewise there. Indeed, even with the spot truly swarmed, it was truly almost impossible to miss the path of blood that went from the passageway window to the most distant finish of the wall. The cop said that somebody was leaving for work promptly toward the beginning of the day when they ran over the blood spreads and afterward quickly called the police. He addressed me and the neighbors. The put was cleaned, and we happened with our lives. However, I was unable to quit mulling over everything. Each and every day, I generally get back home and stroll over where the blood was, and I generally can't help thinking about what in the world occurred in the passageway that evening. Presently, I was somewhat awkward living here previously. However, presently, I'm certainly truly scared out. I keep thinking about whether I'll at any point sort out what occurred. At the point when I was in school, I lived in condos that weren't nearby yet, called understudy lodging. I saw this person around that I believed was really charming. His name was Kiefer. He thumped on my entryway one day, and he said he was the groundskeeper and that he expected to change our AC channels. I was making supper for my flatmate at that point, and for me, and he remarked that it smelled truly pleasant, so I welcomed him in to remain for supper. All went pretty ordinary as we watched a film subsequently, absolutely blameless. At about 12 p.m. or thereabouts, I continued to let him know that I was truly drained, attempting to indicate for him to leave. My flatmate had proactively hit the hay, so it was simply him and me now. In the wake of advising him to leave since I was hitting the hay, he continued to attempt to work me out of it, saying that I ought to remain up longer. He recently continued taking everlastingly, attempting to procrastinate. At the point when he was putting on his shoes, he then, at that point, began crying that he had an issue in both of his calves. He let me know that he was unable to walk higher up and that he didn't have any idea what to do. I truly needed to go thump on his entryway to have his flatmate come and get him. However, I'm in a wheelchair and I was unable to go higher up. We had an additional room in our loft that just had a bed in it, and that's it. He kept inquiring as to whether he could rest in the room, and I continued to tell him no. We contended for like 10 minutes about permitting him to rest in the additional room. I was so cracking depleted, I just felt free to choose to let him. I locked my flatmate's entryway and my entryway, so he basically couldn't come into our rooms. At the point when I got up the following morning, fortunately he was gone and nothing was taken. I sincerely ought to have detailed it to the apartment building, yet I wasn't actually thinking. After several days, I heard somebody thump on my window around midnight. Also, I completely went crazy about it. It turned out to be Kiefer, yet clearly I didn't give him access. Then the following evening, my flatmate and I were in the family room, and afterward he came and thumped on our entryway. In reality, my flatmate responded to it, and he requested me, and she said that I was sleeping as of now. His reaction? No, I know she's not sleeping. I peered inside your window, so I realized she's conscious. No doubt, Kiefer was certainly a jerk.
I'm this way. For some history, I moved from a tiny town to a moderately huge city. It was for college and I was around 19 years of age. Since I wouldn't be in the new city until around September, my prospective flatmate chose to search for a spot for us to live in the fall. In mid-July, she at long last found us, a sufficiently estimated, recently redesigned, near-everything loft. It was on a really bustling street in the city. Quick forward to September, when it was the ideal opportunity for me to move in. Myself and my folks get to the structure, and it looks a piece rumpled from the front, and after entering, within the structure was a flat-out wreck. Machines in the corridors, mortar was running all over the walls, like a kid had been given the material to play with, and the deck was missing in many spots. Since the loft was somewhat great, and since it was my very first condo away from home, I was totally excited to at long last have my very own position. Presently, this condo housed numerous understudies, as well as the property manager and the director, so it appeared to be a moderately protected spot to reside. Isn't that so? Wrong. My flatmate had the entryway bell connected to her telephone, so that when somebody rang, her telephone would ring, and she had the choice to give them access or not. About 7 days after school had begun, I was home since I didn't actually have class until some other time in the day, and my flatmate was working. She messaged me to tell me that somebody had attempted to buzz into the condo, and when she replied, all she heard on the opposite end was a new voice essentially shouting, "Let me in! Give me access at the present time." Fortunately, my flatmate had the sense enough not to give them access to the structure. Around 10 minutes after the fact, somebody comes slamming right against my entryway. Without saying anything, they recently kept thumping for what felt like hours. Despite the fact that it was likely around 20 minutes, truly. I remained in my room the whole time with the entryway shut in light of the fact that I was totally so terrified of who may be remaining external my entryway. At last, the thumping halted, and when I checked individuals, the individual was no more. I felt truly feeling better that I had stayed away from what appeared to be some sort of creep-seeking get in my condo for reasons unknown that I truly didn't know about. Not all that peculiar reoccurred until around 14 days after the fact. Once more, I was home since I was debilitated, and my flatmate was working. I ought to take note of that my flatmate was an airline steward for a little carrier, and clearly she wouldn't have her telephone, assuming that she was at that point in the air. As I review, there was nobody to buzz the entryway this time. So it's initial morning and not excessively lengthy after my flatmate left for work, and somebody came beating on my entryway. Obviously, I didn't find up to solution it since I was as yet wiped out in bed, trusting that they would simply disappear. We weren't anticipating anybody. No bundles or companions. Furthermore, how might they get into the condo in the event that my flatmate's telephone didn't ring for the entryway signal? At the point when I at long last think whoever was thumping at the entryway is left, somebody really opens the way to my loft and strolls right in. I was embarrassed. I generally lay down with my room entryway shut, so it was basically impossible that they would have realized somebody was in there besides by opening the entryway. Since my flatmate was an airline steward, I realized it wasn't her since her flight would have been gone at this point. So it was basically impossible that she might answer her telephone, since there's no help when they're up in the air. I was madly messaging her to tell her that somebody was for sure in our loft without our authorization. Where we reside, our landowner should give 24 hours notice prior to entering the property. As I lay in bed crying and shaking out of unadulterated trepidation, the individual appeared to have quite recently strolled around the lounge room region and afterward left once more. When I heard the front entryway shut, I ran and locked the locks as a whole and put across the chain that would hold anybody back from getting in, regardless of whether they had a key. Right up till now, neither me or my flatmate know whether it was a similar individual or somebody who had recently lived in the condo.